Hello, everyone. Welcome to our community recreation conversation this evening. We'll be talking about the future of Scona Pool, Tipton Arena, and Rollie Miles Park. So the format of tonight's meeting, which Stephen started to go over, we're going to make this a webinar style event. We thought with the number of people who were going to be attending that this might be the best format. So it'll be about 40 minutes presentation with about 20 minutes Q&A at the end. We are asking for respectful discussion. You can use that chat function. Stephen will be kind of interjecting throughout the presentation here, as well as potentially the other panelists, where there's some relevant pieces of discussion that they'd like to add context to. And then at the end, Stephen also will have been looking at your questions in the chat and will kind of be moderating that afterwards, and some of our panelists can maybe dig in to some of your questions. This is a recorded webinar, so that you're aware of that, and we will be sending out a copy of the webinar as well as the presentation to everybody who registered, in case you have other community members who just couldn't make it tonight. We will also be sending out a volunteer sign-up survey, which we'll be posting in the chat shortly, as well as another survey just on community recreation in the area. So for some introductions now, I'm doing this a bit backwards. So my name is Julie Cusick. I am the president of Queen Alexandra Community League. I've been involved in the Scona Pool stuff since about 2009. And I will introduce our other panelists here. We have Councillor Ben Henderson, who I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi, Ben Henderson, councillor for the area. Also been involved in this since 2009, if not earlier. So actually before I represented the area, when I was before it was added to my ward. So I go way back with this discussion. Every time we think we have it taken care of, it seems to rear its head again. So I'm here to answer any questions I can, give you my best guess about what's going to happen, and listen.
Perfect. And then we have Elaine Soles.
Good evening, everyone. I've been involved, like Julie, for quite a long time on this, and more recently focused on the replacement for the eventual replacement for Scona Pool, which is the small rec center at Rollie Miles Park.
Great. And then I have Hans van Ginhoven.
Yeah, hi, happy to be here tonight. I am the principal of Strathcona High School, and I concur with what Councillor Henderson had to say, because I think I've been involved with this since 2009 as well. So, and certainly happy to be part of it tonight, and appreciate everyone's presence.
And then we have Stephen Rates.
Yes, and hello everybody. I'm Stephen Rates. I'm with the Queen Alexandra Community League, and yeah, have recently got involved with this Rollie Miles project in the rec facility. So yes, and I think Julie, just to double check, now would be a good time to just first send out those surveys, just so people can have access to them at the start of the presentation. Make sure we catch people before they go. And so just to double check, we're sending the survey that's titled Community Rec Advocacy Sign-Up Survey, and that's the volunteer one?
Yes, that's right.
And then the second one we're going to send out is the Scona Pool and Tipton Closures Rollie Miles Rec Center unfunded survey, which was the one that went out a little bit earlier, correct?
Yes. Yep. Okay. So the one that went out a bit earlier, you should be able to fill out no problem right away. The sign-up form might make more sense as we get through tonight's presentation. Thanks, Stephen.
No problem.
Okay, so here's what we're going to cover tonight. We're going to do a quick how do city budgets work, how plans are approved at City Hall, a little bit about Tipton Arena, and advocacy in this. We've kind of gone through a 3-phase journey so far. And then the last part is recommended actions and how you can help. So City Budget 101, why are we including this? Because when I started with this in 2009, I didn't know how all of this worked. And I imagine that there's other people out there who also don't know how it works. And it seems like there's always things to learn with how the city budget is put together. So first thing you need to know to understand this conversation is that there's actually an operational budget and a capital budget. The capital budget does things like the construction and the building of stuff. The operational is the stuff that you need to do to operate your city. So like your snow clearing or your operating of your rec facilities. We are now doing 4-year budget cycles with supplemental adjustments in between. And how this works is city administration will put together a proposed or recommended budget for city council. City council goes and debates the different pieces and they make adjustments. They say, oh, we'll actually take this out and add this in, and councillors can make motions to that effect. Councillor Henderson, I'll let you jump in there in case I missed anything that people would need to know to understand.
Well, no, that's fine. I mean, the other interesting things is the real stress on the city right now is on the operational side, because that's based in taxes, and the capital side is less affected by the tax rate. So the real stresses we have right now are on the operational budget, and the other thing that is probably worth mentioning is, yes, we did a 4-year budget, but with the stresses of COVID, this is more than just we're doing more to the budget than we would usually do in an interim supplemental year, because the kind of by asking administration to come up with a 0% tax increase, that's a 3.2% cut from what we had already approved in the 4-year budget, which is significant. So that's what's creating the situation we're in right now.
Great, thank you. So then the next one is City Hall 101, very simplified. So one thing you want to know is that there's council that meets all together to make some decisions. And then council also splits out into committees that handle certain types of recommendations and reports. And so the one that typically handles things around rec centers is called Community and Public Services Committee. So often when there's a report that needs to be brought forward, it goes to one of those committees first. And that is really the opportunity where community members can go and have their say on what they think should happen. So as you'll see throughout tonight's presentation, advocates around the Scona Pool issue, and then later around the Rollie Miles rec center issue, have been to lots of those different committee meetings at different times to try and let council know what they think about what should happen. And then the committee then goes and makes a recommendation that then goes to the full council. And then the full council either accepts that recommendation, or they debate it and ask for more information, or they send it back to committee. And then the whole thing kind of goes again. So it's a bit of an iterative process. And so the pictures there just show that, yes, this takes some time. That little baby girl has grown up, and she's now old enough to babysit babies as old as she was when our family first got started in this. Again, Councillor Henderson, anything else I'm missing for that City Hall 101 to help people understand that piece of things?
No, it's funny to look back and realize how many years we've been doing this, and so far we've always been successful. So more power, I would say. I don't think we would have been if it hadn't been for public input. Often, if not always, led by Julie. So going way back to 2009. So one of the things that's worth, and I don't know if, I can't remember if you're bringing this up later, what we're dealing with now will not go to committee. The committees had to stop functioning all summer. So we're really far behind because we couldn't do them. We're now doing them again. But the issues that are in front of us are going to be budget issues. But that doesn't mean the public doesn't have a chance to weigh in, because we're going to do a public hearing, a non-statutory public hearing on the budget on December 3rd, or at least we're starting it on the 3rd. We'll see how long it goes, which will give people the same chance to weigh in that you get in committee. It's just not going to be, it won't be specifically on this item. It'll be on anything that people want to say about the budget. So it won't just, the advantage of it being at committee is it's often just that item that you're talking to, and we have focus on it. The public hearing will be a little bit broader and will be anything that anybody wants to say, talk to us about with the budget. But it'll be the same thing. We'll hear from a panel of speakers and everybody will get 5 minutes to talk, and then council will have a chance to ask questions.
Perfect. Thanks for clarifying that. So mark your calendars right now. Look at it while we're going through the presentation. See if you're potentially available on December the 3rd. So let's talk about Tipton Arena. So this is the context as best as I could put it together. If you know something more than I do, just plop it into the chat and we will sort of update this before we send it out to everyone. So Queen Alexandra actually has 2 single sheet ice arenas in the neighborhood. We have Tipton Arena and we have Southside Arena. Southside Arena is located by the EFCL building in Strathcona High School. The users for that is the community gets, the free 1 hour public skating. I know that school groups go there. The kids from Our Lady Mount Carmel walk over for their hockey academy. They also walk over for the grades 1 to 3 skating lessons. At Tipton Arena, same thing. There's that 1 hour public skating and hockey. Southside Arena has had some renovations more recently, and my understanding is that that arena is in fairly good shape, and that the city at this point, I think, is planning to keep it open for some time still. Back over to the Tipton side, as I was preparing for this, I was getting comments from community members around some complaints around parking over there, and the question that if we were to have that closed for ice, which is the expensive piece, could we not repurpose it into another sort of community type space? That's what I know. Again, Councillor Henderson, is there anything else there that
just to add, yeah, the city's policy is that we'll keep fixing up the ones that are fixable, but that we won't build any more single pad arenas. The idea is any replacement would have to be twin, and neither of these I think are twinnable because of the amount of land around them. We know that arenas are fully booked, however, so it's really hard to take one out until we can build new ones, and we don't have probably any new ones coming online anytime in the next few years. So that makes this more complex. So I think you're right. I think Southside Arena probably isn't going anywhere, although in the long term, probably it will get replaced by a twin. But that could be very long term at this point. And by that point, the thinking may well have changed. Tipton, my understanding is in less good shape, and is more likely to not at some point be repairable. But we do have a policy in place that says if we close these, it would then go in a process that asks the question about what repurposing might look like. That's my memory anyway. We certainly had that conversation. So there's no decisions made until you decide to close as an ice arena, but it's not a given that it would necessarily, depending on the shape the building's in, and that I'm not sure of, it's not a given that it wouldn't get repurposed for something else. And that would be that theoretically should be a subsequent conversation. But again, we're living in a new world right now, and I don't know how that will play out.
So when you're filling out your volunteer survey, if Tipton Arena is the thing that's really motivating you to get out here tonight, just make a comment there. We do have an open comment box about, what in particular you want to help out with, and we will help group together the people who are interested in working on the Tipton file and connect you with one another. Okay, so
Julie, just to double check really quick, we had a couple things that came in just to flag that the Strathcona High School phys ed department, they and Mount Carmel use these facilities a ton, and it's proximity that's the key. Just wanted to get that message out there. And then one question coming from Christine about whether programming that currently occurs at Tipton, like skating lessons, would that be moved to Southside? Currently, Southside does not offer skating lessons. So we may not have answers right now, but we can just share that with everybody. And yeah, keep on going.
Perfect. Yeah, those are good questions and things that this group that would be interested in looking at would be advocating for. So thank you. Okay, so around the Scona Pool issue, the phase 1 of advocacy, you can see, was quite long. So in 2009, Scona Pool was closed temporarily, and the high school came out in full force to really show why this was such an important place for them, as well as a whole bunch of other people. I remember that public hearing being really dominated by discussions around the library and around Scona Pool. So we were granted 1 year of operational funding in 2010. In 2011, we came back in full force and fought again for operational funding for a year. Plus there was a couple months of summer maintenance closure. Now that was a really scary thing for us, because whenever you said Scona Pool is closed, everyone was freaking out. And what we needed to teach people was that it wasn't closed for good. There's something called a maintenance closure, which means it will open again once things have been fixed up. And then our next sort of win was in 2012 when, rather than remember this operating budget where we're just getting year by year funding and we have to go and make our case every year, we actually got back into the base operating budget. So we actually had a relatively quiet time advocacy wise from 2012 until 2018, where we didn't have to fight every year for the pool because it was in that sort of default operating budget. And the only way that it could come out is if council made a motion to bring it out. What happened in 2018, you'll see, is that administration did a service review and said, oh, this pool, as well as a couple of other ones, should come out of the budget. So then it became a council responsibility to actually make a motion to put that back into the budget. And then we're back into 2020, repeat of 2018. Administration has recommended it come out. It's going to be up to council to make a motion to put that back into the budget. Now, I have had the question come up several times over the past week. Why don't we just keep Scona Pool and forget about something like Rollie Miles Rec Center? That's what the community asked for many years. We said, we don't need anything big and fancy. Please just renovate this so we can stop having to come back every year to get that operational funding. And city administration went and did a thorough review of the facility, as well as its intricate tie-ins with the operations of the high school. And they said it's actually not worth fixing, and they will not rehabilitate it to the state where it can be ongoing forevermore, and that one day it will close. So every time we go back to ask for another year or several years of operating money, it is with the understanding that if anything major blows in the pool will be shut down. There will not be another major renovation that happens to that pool ever. Okay, so when we were doing all of this advocacy from 2009 and onwards, City Council of the day had two major requests for us. One of it was show us that user numbers can increase, because right now they're really low. The second thing that they asked us to do was to really show community ownership of the pool. So that's what we set out to do. So we did things like we maintained a bulletin board, which showed what Friends of Scona Pool, the committee that was put in place at the time, was up to. We participated in the Silly Summer Parade and had a whole lot of fun. We also fundraised. In 5 months, we raised $12,000 from community leagues, from prize money, and bottle collection that the high school students at Strathcona High would actually collect bottles. They would come to the Queen Alex Community League Hall, they would get other bottles and they would collect the money. And some of the things we bought were in order to improve user numbers there. So you can see this little tot dog that actually costs a few $1,000s. And it raises up the level. So there's a little platform for the kids because they were too short to reach the bottom of the pool, and that was preventing young families from using it. So we said, okay, we'll solve that problem, put in a tot dock, and now everybody can come. Doesn't matter how little your kids are. The high school kids also did renovations to the party room. Now, what's amazing is, again, time marches on. I don't know any of these kids, but this was long enough ago that I'm sure a bunch of these kids now have university degrees or families of their own. We also did other things like beautifying the patio by planting flowers. And one of the kids in this photo, actually for her 10th birthday at the time, donated all of her birthday money to the renovations at Scona Pool. And that little girl is also now graduated from high school. We did the I Swim Scona campaign, which was basically a marketing campaign that says there's lots of different ways to use Scona Pool. We wanted to increase awareness of the pool, showcase some of the different user groups that were there, and get our user numbers up and really show the good news stories. So again, here we are with our fancy I Swim Scona t-shirts. This, and actually I do need to give a shout out to Gary, did say hello earlier. Gary is the owner of River City Recreation, who is the current operator of Scona Pool. I don't know if everyone knows, but Scona Pool is not operated by the city of Edmonton, even though it is owned by the city of Edmonton. So for the past several years, River City Recreation has been operating the facility on behalf of the city of Edmonton. And during this 2009 to 2012 timeframe, River City Recreation was worked hand in hand with the community to advocate for the pool and to get those user numbers up. And so that's one of the staff persons that was at Scona Pool at the time. And there's Elaine with our prize money from that year. And you can see again, it was all about letting people know. There's that little sign in the back saying, "See you in the fall." We were deadly worried that people would stop coming to the pool after the summer maintenance closure, because people would hear the pool was closed and they would stop coming. So this was our way to say, we'll be back, don't worry. Okay, and then of course, to celebrate that the pool was back open, we had a week-long pool party with some of the other organizations that use the pool. Then in 2012, we did the same thing. We had a welcome back party, and Michael Jans is another one of the major champions of this process over the years, and he's had many races with his ward members at the pool. Again, collaboration was a major part of it. We went and as community members worked hand in hand with the operator to go and develop some swim pass programs for community leagues that weren't already using the pool with their community league memberships. And we also did a voucher program for area businesses. We worked with the UAPS Kayak Club, Northwest Scuba, Orca Synchronized Swimming, and of course the Scona Swim Team. We also supported other initiatives at the pool that added a bit of creativity. We also issued regular reports to council, which told them what our user number increases were, as well as the major community advocacy points that we were doing. We took a positive approach to advocacy rather than saying, "Oh, we're so frustrated, city, you're so terrible, everyone's out to get us. Why do you keep doing this to us?" We said, no, we're going to actually have fun, and we're going to show that this pool is valuable to the community and that we are taking ownership of it. And here's how. Oops. But time marches on, as you will see. This is a picture of Rob McDonald, as well as one of the kids at the time, Lucas. And Rob is no longer with us and never got to get to advocacy phase 2. But Lucas, as you can see, is now, a strapping young man in grade 11 who goes around the neighborhood shoveling walks for people. So what I'm trying to say is we don't have time to continue to fight the same battle over and over on let's get another year of operational funding for the pool. Time does march on. People leave us, leave the earth for good. People grow up. It's time to move on to the next phases of advocacy and make some progress. Okay, so our new opportunity is with Rollie Miles District Park. What this does is it gets us to true problem solving. It puts our money where our mouth is and aligns us with the city plan. It pilots a small scale community recreation model at about a quarter the price tag of some other larger models. It's also going to pilot alternative funding options and can apply to the Oliver context as well. So I'm going to unpack all of that in the next slides. So in 2013, the City of Edmonton started its consultation around the Rollie Miles District Park. So if you don't know where Rollie Miles District Park is, you can imagine the track by Strathcona High School itself, the EFCL building, and the tennis courts and all of that green space around there. So what the city wanted to do was they wanted to rehabilitate that parkland area and renew it. And we said, why are you doing this? There's no pool there. Who builds a house? Or sorry, who does the landscaping and then builds their house? No, everybody builds their house and then does their landscaping. And that's what we want to do here. We want to get the rec center built to replace Scona Pool before we go ahead and do all the fancy landscaping. So the city came back in 2015, did some more consultation, and 93% of people actually wanted an indoor recreation facility. So in 2016 to 2018, the work got going on that. And, Elaine has been a major part of that, as well as Kim Clegg from the Queen Alexandra Community League, and Stephen, who's here tonight, as well as a whole bunch of others. And this is the vision that was brought together. And then the major win was at, again, Community and Public Services Committee, where we all came and said, okay, here are the different draft master plans, and we really want the one with the rec center option. And so at that time, I remember Councillor McKean really taking to the idea of this could be a pilot that would be for a small scale rec facility that would not only solve the problem in the Scona Pool area, but could also be applied to the Oliver region, which was also facing a bit of an issue with amenity scarcity and aging facilities. So that committee went and directed administration to work again with the community advisory committee and come back with a business case for a small rec facility that included a pool. So this community advisory committee came back with vision and principles, things like we want this to be small, we want this to be accessible in terms of its affordability for people in the area. We also want it to minimize the amount of parkland green space that it takes up. We want it to be accessible by public transit, by walking, by biking, that sort of thing. So all of that for the cost of $2.3 million to design it and about $75 million to construct it. Just to put that in the context of other recreation facilities in the city, Terwilliger back in 2011 was about 160, the Meadows was about 119, and the proposed Lewis Farms that was up in front of council recently was estimated to be 321 million. So this would cost about a quarter of that proposed Lewis Farms. So what does that get you? This is what the functional program that was approved by council looks like. So it would have a pool, an outdoor court and some skating, a multi-fitness area, a gym, and outdoor activity support. And one of the other things that was really important throughout this functional planning process was that we wanted things to be usable in different seasons. So there would actually be an area to flood the outdoors for a skating rink and that sort of thing. The other thing that I should make note of is the EFCL has been involved in these discussions, and their building would actually have to move as a result of this. Elaine, is there anything else I'm missing in terms of this process, or in particular the functional programming?
I just wanted to say that the area that would be flooded for skating in the winter would be an outdoor basketball court in the rest of the year. And that it has two entrances, one on the west side for sort of the community walking, biking entrance, and the other off Calgary Trail, 104th Street, that drives into a drop-off area at the lobby and then into the parking lot. So it has those features. The tennis court would move a bit, but it protects that nice open area of green space between the high school and the rec center.
Good, thanks, Elaine. And as you can see, it is very close in proximity to the high school. And so, Hans, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add from the high school's perspective and this functional programming at Rollie Miles. I know that the high school was involved in the process. And
yeah, that's what I just wanted to point out. And that was, when you talked about us working to increase the usage of Scona Pool, which I think we were very successful with, what was nice that the city at the same time invited us to participate in the many planning meetings along with the community in the design of Rollie Miles. So we appreciated that. And we really liked being part of the process. And it's really not far from Scona, so.
Wonderful. Okay, thanks. So then we started to continue that fight. So you can see residents fight for small rec center at Rollie Miles. Park Allen started a petition. We've got all the moms there on their morning visits with their little toddlers saying, please do this. We can't come out to speak at City Hall today, but look at our picture. So we get to 2018, Scona Pool got pulled back out of the city's base operating budget. But what's interesting here is there was a shift. Up until this point, it was just a Scona Pool issue, and it was just an issue of this community fighting for the ideas around we're getting increased infill, we're getting an increasing in population, we're getting a change in demographics, we're trying to live more sustainably. Fewer people around here have cars, they want to be able to walk places and bike places, but that was all just our argument up until 2018. Then Oliver and East Glen were also threatened for closure. And that brought in a bigger city discussion where all of a sudden facilities that are serving a local population in a densely populated area where people have fewer backyards are now also being threatened. At the same time, Rollie Miles District Park, the rec center, was not approved on the capital side. What we were looking for was the design funding. So just to back up, the process is when you're building something new, you have a concept that's approved. That's what you just saw in this slide. That's the concept that was approved. Then what needs to happen is you need design funding. That's going to be 2.3 million for Rollie Miles. Then the next phase is construction dollars, and that comes in another future budget. So thankfully, though, we dodged the bullet, and Oliver, East Glen, and Scona could splash for 2 years. One thing that's interesting to note is that 2018 program service review that happened revealed that it actually costs about as much to operate Scona Pool for 4 years as it does to demolish it. And because we wouldn't want a vacant building right beside the high school that isn't being used, or frankly, anywhere in the neighborhood, does it actually save the city money to close this? Because we would actually really want that to be demolished. The only thing it does is it changes where the money's coming from. So rather than it being in the operational side, it's in the capital side, because that demolition would have to come out of the capital side, I believe. Is that correct, Councillor Henderson? Perfect. So because we know that one day Scona Pool will close, we do need to keep working towards this Rollie Miles piece. And in the meantime, keep asking that those operations happen, because we know that the demolition costs are about the same as 4 years of operation. So because we didn't win that capital funding for design in 2018, what the community started to do was to say, look, we are actually so wanting this that we would be willing to look at alternative ways to fund Rollie Miles Rec Center and the construction of it. So Friends of Scona Rec, which is a group of community members and other stakeholders, began to work with city administration on this. So we looked at things, I'll just skip here for a second. It looked at things like developer amenity contributions or fundraising. So when a new tower goes up near the White Avenue area, that developer has to allocate a certain amount of money to the community. It can be in the form of art, it can be in the form of whatever. And we said, hey, that money should actually be coming towards building Rollie Miles Rec Center. There's also something called a community revitalization levy, which actually I'm just going to go through these quickly, and then I'll hand it over to Stephen actually to explain all of this really well. A local improvement tax, which would be something like, when the streetlights get replaced in some neighborhoods, you pay an extra tax for a while. Private development, or a mix of other options. So Stephen, maybe just explain that, and then.
Yeah, so going through each of those bullet points?
Or whatever you'd like. And just in relation to what was happening with those discussions and where they're at.
Absolutely. So with the alternative financing mechanisms, this is the piece that is going to a committee meeting on December 2nd, correct?
That's
Yes. Right. And so the city has investigated some of these approaches that are listed here. And what we're trying to push from the community is for the city to more confidently take up some of these options or consider these options. I think throughout the process, it sometimes has been a bit waffly, or they've been looking for problems to identify instead of solutions to make things work. So if you're able to speak on the second, that would kind of be the focus there. And And so, yeah, there's that meeting right there. But just to cover some of these, a developer amenity contribution would be if a private developer was building a larger project, let's say like something like some of the medium or high-rise buildings that we see going in along the White Ave corridor, they may take a portion of their, they may like almost donate in a way a portion or some money towards a community pot that then could go towards this project. So taking little bits from each project, adding up to something. A CRL, community revitalization levy, is a kind of an approach to taxation where a bar is set in the initial year, and then anything below that bar continues to go to the city's general pot of taxation, but any uplift that is caused by the development of a project goes to paying back that project. We've seen that in a couple of locations in Edmonton, like Station Point, where they updated some streetscape things around an LRT station, and then downtown with some streetscape improvements around the arena, as well as other improvements. A local improvement tax would just be kind of like an additional fee that would be on top of property taxes that would be probably small and would go for an extended period of time to cover the cost of the project. Private development in conjunction with the rec facility would be like kind of like a developer amenity contribution, but instead of the developer working, you know, somewhere along 109th or on White Avenue, there could be a private development that occurs right beside the rec facility, and the developer could build that and then also contribute some to the rec center. And then, yeah, what we're pushing for is a mix. I'm a mix. Like really, I guess the focus on the second is, you know, the city's sometimes been a bit waffly with stuff, but really we know that not just one solution is key, it's multiple solutions. I also just want to provide an opportunity for Elaine to add any thoughts or that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah, just a couple things. I would say one of the ideas is advertising signs. The park and the facility is along Calgary Trail. I mean, it's not a pristine part of the river valley. We could have advertising signs on the park or on the building. The way the development would contribute, a development on the site would contribute, would be leasing land from the city and paying, making a payment to the city annually in lieu of property tax. So there would be some revenue going to the city from that kind of development. And the place we were thinking of doing it is above the parking lots, because you're not taking away park space, usable park space, if you build above a parking lot. You maintain the parking lot and then you build above it. And the idea of a mix is that then no one particular group feels that they are overly burdened by contributing to this. And we'd expect the city to contribute some from the property tax base as well. This wouldn't cover the whole cost, but it could go a good long ways. And I think the special tax, what's on the slide is local improvement levy. People are talking about something in the area of $50 a year for 20 years, nothing that would be onerous to most property owners in the area.
Perfect. So again, when you go to fill out your volunteer sign-up sheet from tonight's meeting, if this kind of discussion is really perking your interest, let us know, because we are happy to share, you know, more materials and more information with you, so that if you do want to present at committee about the alternative financing report, which should be released later in the week, then we can get you involved in that. I see Ben Henderson, you might want to say something.
I was going to say the report will come out Thursday with reports for that committee.
Right.
So it'll be public Thursday, and we haven't seen it yet either.
Great. So now we're into advocacy phase 3 is what I'm calling it, because what happened is it was us alone, Scona Pool. That phase ended when we found out that Scona Pool would can never be rehabbed, that one day it will close. Phase 2 then started, where we started on the Rollie Miles Rec Center replacement train, which we are still in terms of needing to get those alternative financing options looked at, as well as getting the design and eventually construction approved. Phase 3 is beginning concurrently with the remainder of that phase 2, which is now, this is not just about us, it is about a bigger question around that city building. Oliver is being threatened. East Glen's pool is being threatened, as well as a couple of arenas. And we know that the city has been wanting people to consider living in the core, in infill properties, in smaller homes, maybe places without backyards. And so the argument is, if we're getting people to live more densely, there is a huge property tax increase in terms of the revenue side in those areas. We do need to be providing amenities to those residents as well, in order to make those pleasant places and desirable places to live. So it is my opinion that we will get much further if we work together. If the people who are doing the Scona Pool thing are supporting the Oliver and East Glen folks, and vice versa, because this is really a bigger city building issue. And whether the city can put its money where its mouth is, in terms of supporting the city plan. And the city plan is that big document that just got passed that talks about these 15-minute communities. And also, energy transition has been up in front of council lately, living more sustainably, living more locally. And all of these things sort of point to the Rollie Miles test. Will council be ready to make that decision to put its money where its mouth is? So here we go. All of us are up for closure again, and Rollie Miles has not yet been approved. So here's our opportunity, sticking together with these messages to council, that it is really, really time to get Rollie Miles Rec Center designed with the capital funding in this budget for that. That is really important, because this council needs to signal to the next council that the city plan matters, and that taking action towards fulfilling that city plan matters. This is also important because by the time the next council rolls around, I don't know if there will be any council members that were there in 2009 still there. So yeah, let's follow through on this and get this done. The third message is that in the meantime, until we get Rollie Miles done, these amenities in these little, mature neighborhoods are really important. It's important that Scona stay open. It's important that Oliver stays open. It's important that East Glen stays open. These are still valuable to the communities that they serve, and they actually don't cost very much to operate, and they cost a fair bit more to demolish. The last thing is, this really is a test. It is a test of whether City Council is willing to like I said, put their money where their mouth is. It's also a test, I think, of the community to look at the battles that there are and the war that there is to be won. The war that there is to be won is to start shifting the city towards this philosophy of smaller scale rec in a sustainable way. And to me, that's this Rollie Miles Rec Center design that pilots a small scale rec facility and pilot some alternative financing mechanisms. Once Rollie Miles is built, we'll have a better idea of how that might work in other contexts, including the Oliver context and perhaps the East Glen as well. So while keeping Scona Pool and all of these other ones are very important, those are some of the battles that need to be won. And we should continue to fight those battles while we have our eye on that bigger picture war and that bigger picture win, which is getting Rollie Miles actually built. So our best case scenario for 2020 is design funding for Rollie Miles plus continued operations of these facilities. That is super important. So what I'm inviting you to do tonight is to do that sign up survey that Stephen posted in the chat, so that we can connect you with other people that are interested in the same things and get you the support you might need if you've never done some of this advocacy before. The second thing is to fill out the survey around local, recreation amenities in the area. That survey was actually a copycat of the Oliver one. Oliver one started to do a survey. I was chit-chatting with them. They said, hey, Julie, why don't you do a survey? And then we can kind of compare our results and we can work together when we get time to go to council and the city budget meetings. So that's where that came from, and that's why it's also valuable. The next thing is writing a letter to City Council in support of Rollie Miles funding, as well as Scona Pool, and signing up to speak at one or both of the December 2nd committee meeting on alternative financing or the December 3rd meeting on the city budget. Finally, it's really important that you share this information with others. I believe that the best advocacy happens when it happens within the relationships of a community. So you going to talk to your neighbor is probably one of the best ways to make some major hay here. And after this meeting, you can expect us to send you a recording of this video to anyone, and you can again pass that on. You will also receive a copy of this presentation and some other supports. So there we have it. From there, questions?
Yes, we're getting lots of questions in the chat. There were lots of good comments that I feel like we can just cover really quickly, and that we can just recognize, and hopefully people will be able to push for this stuff if people are signing up and that kind of thing. But a couple people raised that Strathcona Pool fits a really great niche in the area. It supports a lot of special education programs, which is really important, and that can't really be as well supported elsewhere. So to remove this facility from the mix is removing a lot of access to different groups. It also provides a lot of affordability and accessibility. And if you remove this facility from the mix, then you push the current users elsewhere, and elsewhere is already kind of booked up. So we're like maxing out on a lot of fronts. So that's why it's key to keep these facilities open as they provide the overflow kind of room. Or not that we're overflow or extra, we're important, but just to recognize that. And then also there's an equity piece, like kind of mentioned, that Strathcona is a destination school, and so it captures lots of folks from around the city. So very important. And I just was able to capture a couple of questions so far. One of them was talking about contributing to the design, like different user groups contributing to the design, and just kind of to reiterate on that front. Some ideas have kind of been set already in a prior engagement process of what sort of facilities would be included within the within Rollie Miles if that project moves forward. But of course, if we move into the actual design stage, that's when we get to start figuring out some of the exciting finer details that some specific user groups may have a lot of stake in. So we would see that opportunity open up soon. There was a good question about, do you think we could be using similar design in Oliver and East Glen if we were to do this project in more places? So Julie, maybe you can comment on the idea of like how Rollie Miles could set a really good precedent for elsewhere and help achieve city plan.
Right. So the discussion at the time, again, at that committee meeting where I mentioned that Councillor McKean was there, Councillor Henderson was there too, so he might want to jump in as well. But the idea is here that this problem of having fewer amenities or aging amenities in mature neighborhoods is not unique to the Scona Pool situation. And so if we can think of something that meets the needs of the community and the surrounding areas, including some of those, special, unique pieces that were brought up in the chat, and do that on the smallest scale possible, without all the bells and whistles, but that really gets down to the basics and achieves all of those functions that the community would need, then possibly, I mean, I don't know what the area there would be, but the idea is then that can be sort of taken as a template that could then be adjusted for example, the Oliver context.
I want to jump in a little bit on this. The whole idea of the Rollie Miles Rec Center, to add to what Julie was saying, was that it could be a model that could be used elsewhere, and it has sort of the basic components of a rec center. The city doesn't build one-off rec facilities anymore. It has to have multiple components. And so you know, we have the multi-purpose room, the gym, the pool, the little area outside for skating and basketball. So it's a scaled down version. It's not a megaplex. And the idea is that it could be used in new neighborhoods as the population grows, or in older neighborhoods as you know, through infill, the population grows, or older facilities need to be replaced. So the idea was that it could be replicated, and it's very rectangular. It's not the kind of thing that needs a lot of land to build.
Mhm.
I would just add that I think part of what we need to pilot is the very concept of a smaller rec center, so and show that that will work in a not just from an operating point of view, that they can be viable. They can be viable in terms of attracting the kind of numbers and attendance and activity. It reminds me very much of the debate with the LRT when McKernan Belgravia, when the McKernan Belgravia neighborhoods insisted that if the LRT was going to come by them, they had to have a neighborhood station. And at that point, the thinking was, you know, that's not what the LRT is about. The LRT is about long distances between stations and getting people in from the suburbs. And the station was so successful when it got built that we've now replicated that in the design of all of our other LRT. So I think that's the window here. There is the city went for decades without building any recreational centers. And then all of a sudden, about 15 years ago, it started. And it started in filling them in the gaps where there wasn't anything. And in a suburban context, which is designed around, you know, large shopping malls and everybody going by car, building the mega rec center probably made some sense. But we've got very fixed in our thinking that way. And I think people are having a real trouble conceiving of what's being talked about here in terms of a more neighborhood and local and walkable, smaller, less expensive option. And it's become really clear, which is why Lewis Farms is not being built right now, that the big ones have got way too expensive and we can't afford them either. So I think there's a cusp here of shift in thinking that if we can get this happening and get them to try it and prove its success, could then be replicated elsewhere. But it's as much about coming up with an operating model that works as it does about the design of the place.
Julie, could I say something? Would that be okay? I really appreciate Councillor Henderson, how you put that, because it makes sense to me, and that there does have to be a shift in thinking. I think we in our neighborhood there, I think what we've learned the last 9 years is something quite powerful. And we've learned as a school and a community that when we really work together, we can make things happen. And so we learned that, you know, your slides, Julie, were really illustrative. We did all these things, and the pool usage went up dramatically, and there was a whole sense of community, I think, built for other issues. And then we started talking about Rollie miles. In the meantime, our community keeps filling in, and that's really, really cool. And so that's when your words, Councillor Henderson, I think are great. I do think I have watched the evolution of the LRT, and I could see that I really believe our city's policy of sustainable and walkable communities. And so then that would necessitate over time an evolution in what we're thinking about with rec centers, right? And I guess just being my background is Dutch and I'm pragmatic, I would say, you know, in the meantime, you know, there is a demand for the south side arena. You can't get ice space. Our pool last year, I took scuba diving lessons with my daughter at Scona Pool, and the people told me you can't find pool time anywhere. So we have small pools that really are not a large impact on the city budget. If you look at, I think I saw a savings of what, $1.2 million. And it would be my hope that given the nature of the community building we've done, that the city, and I understand the budget pressures, you know, at our high school, our budget was reduced by 7% as well. but that the essentials are kept in place, and I'm not saying it's easy, but I think you need to put in place the things that support the communities and the community efforts. So I think I've talked a lot. So thanks, Julie.
That was beautiful. So I'm thinking, Stephen, do you want to do one more question and then maybe we'll wrap it up for the night?
I'm thinking we've kind of got a couple questions that are coming in, but just to sort of summarize the last little arc that we were on and approach one other question we got of how do we convince some of the other people who are on council who don't represent this area why investing in this area is really important. And I think just to summarize what we've kind of been circling around, this is all about piloting something that we need to figure out how to do going forward. We currently don't have the skill set to create these smaller rec centers because we're focused on the big mega projects out in the suburbs. But based on our city vision and where we want to get, we've got to figure out how to do this, how to do something like Rollie Miles in Oliver, in the Highlands, like in these kind of core neighborhoods that we want to fill back in. So I'm hoping that covers it all right. The sort of big picture idea that we're working on here. And there's kind of a couple other smaller questions that I really think are best handled on a one-off sort of basis because they're a little bit more specific. So if you're having one of those questions or you feel like your question didn't get covered, we just recommend that through one of the forms, you indicate that you have a question. I think that worked, Julie. Is there one specific form that they should fill out if they have a lingering question?
Yeah, in particular, that volunteer sign up survey. I'll be going through that. Every single person who fills that out, I will be scouring that for any particular follow-up that you need. So that is the one to put your particular questions in. As well, you can send me an email, which is up there on the screen.
And actually, one other procedural question that I think would be helpful for everybody to have. Can we share these slides afterwards? Do we have a link to that readily accessible right now, or can we send that on an email blast?
We'll send it on the email blast. I don't
Sweet.
quite have that as a shareable link yet.
All good. Awesome.
In terms of maybe just to give, if it's okay, we can just take a minute or two more. I'll try and do this quickly to sort of give a feel for where I think council's at, and I don't know. One of the downsides of how much we're having to do virtually is we don't get as much time to talk to each other. So I think there is a kind of thinking on a lot of council that, and it's part of the reimagine. And I'm looking at Michael's question here about privatizing. I don't think it's so much going to private operators and privatizing our rec facilities, but that we maybe really need to think big picture how we may provide some of these services. And it may be going back to the partnership model. For years we did this with the Y, and we would put resources into the Y building facilities that they would then run. So I think there is part of council that is beginning to think that we may need a slightly different model from what we've been doing. And yes, that would include the big ones as well as the small ones. It worries me a little bit that we're in tougher than we have been. I think there has always been support on council. It was bad luck that I couldn't get the planning money in 2 years ago. We did a lottery about which motions came up first, and by the time this one came up in the lottery, the money had all been spent. And I had thought there'd be another opportunity to get it in. There was no great hurry to get it in because the planning work didn't need to happen until now, because you wouldn't start looking for construction money into the next capital budget that happens 2 years from now. So there is an argument that this is the window. There was definitely support before for doing this. It would have passed if I could have got it on the table. Whether or not that support is still there for the planning money, I do not know. But I'm less confident this time that we're going to win the battle of keeping these facilities open. I think we should give it a go. I don't think we should give up, but it does feel like council's in a different frame of mind right now. And the problem is, if we set it as a hard number that we cannot go over a 0% tax increase, then if we put something like this back on the table, something else will have to come off. And that makes this budget a little bit different from any one that I've ever been involved in. So, I mean, that's the lay of the land. I think we should certainly shoot for both. I think we may have better luck with the planning money. And once we can get that done, it begins to build a kind of inevitability in the administration's mind that council want this to happen and we need to move towards doing it, which is not to say we shouldn't work to keep it open as well. And I think make that case. But I'm less hopeful than I have been in the past about that, which is really sad given how successful we've been so far in terms of getting it here. It's really disappointing to have to fight this battle yet again. But the reality is, my memory is that the problem with the current pool is structural more than anything else. It's not the equipment that's in there, it's the building that's not going to last indefinitely, which is why investing in the current pool significantly probably doesn't make sense. And that's why we came up with the idea that, well, then let's look at the small rec center. And given the city plan, which talks about 15-minute neighborhoods, it is completely in line with our thinking. And I think we need to be held to account on that and say, this is our first chance to create something like the city that we say we envision. So that's my take. Who knows what happens? We'll give it a go.
Well, here. So with that, I hope that you're not feeling depressed at the end of this, and I hope that you're feeling inspired. Remember all those like really happy pictures from way back at the beginning of this presentation. So I think that, you know, it's going to be a lot of work, but it can also be a lot of fun doing this work, particularly if you're doing it with others in your neighborhood. You know, Zoom can be cool. And you know, let's just get to work and get it done. And you know, we've had a lot of people working for a long time on this, and of course, you know, time marches on. You know, if you've got some time or some talent in a particular area, or even just a really great idea you want to make happen, let's do it. Put it in that survey, get in touch, and let's get you set up to run with that, because that's the kind of thinking that's going to get us where we need to get.
Really quickly, because I'm realizing we haven't talked about Tipton a lot. It would be really helpful to get people, if there are people that feel really strongly that, you know, what the importance of is at Tipton, especially when we have the other arena in the neighborhood. The reality is that most of the use of our arenas are not local. People are driving all over the city because that's the way their games are set up. So it's a slightly different argument. But if there are people that really feel that it's important on a local context, we need that information. We need to understand it. But that's, I think, why we haven't talked about the arenas quite so much, because they have far less local use than a pool does. They tend to be citywide use and just be scattered around the city. So if I'm missing part of that picture, it would be very helpful to know.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you to our panelists for answering questions. Thank you to everybody who tuned in tonight, and we look forward to hearing from you. And in that survey, sorry, one last thing, please indicate if you want to be part of another meeting, kind of sort of like this on the weekend, where we can really dig into that alternative financing model, and also help with some tips and tricks for putting together a presentation to council. Okay, that's it now. Good night, all.
Presentations, 2 presentations.
2 presentations. Okay. Good night.